There we are.
Hey! It's weird talking to myself while I'm doing stuff.
How is the audio, guys? Is everything alright? Microphone doesn't seem to be working. Say something, Evan? Now? Say something again? I think now it works. Uh-uh. Still can't hear. Okay. That's odd. I can hear you. But you guys can hear me? Okay. I didn't change anything from the setting. Huh.
Thing!
I think now they can hear you, right? Evan, say something.
Something. I'll talk. Oh,
It works.
hello everybody. Okay. Oh, now they can hear me.
Sorry for that. Had to press some funny buttons.
All right. So I figure we could leave it up to the audience if we should continue. This guy from last time, who, to refresh everybody's memory, was he's a orc witcher hunter. Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. So we could either do that, or we could start something new if someone has any interesting idea. Continue, please. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So let's see how far we can get this guy in the allotted time. And I hope some of you guys are drawing along. Oh, an ogre would be nice. Okay. So I think we have most interest in continuing with this one, but we can sort of make it a limited run for this one and then do an ogre next time, maybe. That'd be interesting.
Okay, the sound of the following stuff is still there. I thought I have disabled it. You guys ask stuff.
Samurai. Ooh, samurai ogre. There's an idea. That'd be interesting. Like trying to use really crude materials to mimic the idea of like samurai armor. That'd be cool. Maybe come up with like some sort of ogre idea of Bushido. Honorable smashing techniques. Are we having sound problems again?
If you have what?
Do we have sound problems again? The sound of following.
No. I'm pretty sure everybody can hear you well now.
All right.
I figured out what the problem was. It's just as a clarification. It's Apple is doing it pretty hard to stream. Like they have some settings here, and also like the latest OBS with what was it, with Streamlabs and everything. It just doesn't exist, so I have to work around it a bit, and yeah, I messed up.
That was Spirit on talking, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so to get it off, the ground for the stream. So what I'm doing right now is I'm creating sort of outward silhouette. There's a little bit of design work to be done, but though you should have tried to do as much as you could with the line art, sometimes that can be difficult, like reading larger volumes and stuff through line. And sometimes, like with something that's loose, is like a ragged cape thing, it can get kind of abstract with ooh, I'll read that question in a second. It can be kind of difficult to draw out all of the volumes as they sort of move around, since they're supposed to be kind of the remnants of a whole cloth. So I usually try and design interesting sort of visual shapes instead, and then kind of justify them through cast shadows later. I'll show you that when I get to it, but it's like a lot of this stuff, especially for the outlying parts of a character, is very much down to like suggested detail rather than specific detail, because you don't really want the eye resting out here unless there's this particular reason to it. Like if the main character trait or character piece of equipment is a cape, then you kind of want to keep it, more as a aesthetic effect than anything. So there's a question. Last stream you mentioned Loomis as a good starting point because you knew how to mitigate the stiffness. As someone who struggles with just this, how do you go about mitigating the stiffness? Good use of double mitigation. So a good thing to do is to really focus on gesture studies, and in doing that, you kind of do the exact opposite of a master study or an in-depth anatomy study. You study the movement, so you give yourself a really short time, so that you force yourself to focus on one aspect alone, and to work dynamically really usually helps with sort of capturing movement, because you have to kind of swing your pencil around a little bit. So it's the one time where I'm all for working deliberately quickly. So you go find like good sort of video that incorporates a lot of cool movement that you find interesting. So I usually do like dancing videos or fencing videos and stuff like that, and I'll find like a segment that I think is cool, like a little succession of movements, and then I'll pause the video and choose like one individual in the video and like draw them within 30 seconds, just like a super quick sketch. And the trick is to try and be as deliberate as possible while also taking advantage of how quickly your pen has to move. And sort of the impressionistic aspect of that, like trying to really capture what's in front of you rather than any sort of analytical drawing. And the better you get, or the quicker you get, the better you get at sort of observing and capturing these things. And then by reproduction, by going back and then trying to think up that same pose and then drawing it out and then comparing and contrasting and repeating, you can get a much better feel for gestural drawing. And I think that is a really useful tool.
Do you have any plans to go or have a talk at the Philippines again?
Yeah, I really would love that. Last time I was there, that was really great. At the
Icon Manila.
Icon Manila. That was great, and we had such a cool time going around the capital and looking at a lot of the historical ruins and getting some like the historical sites and getting some cool background story. And it was also where Goro Fujita, just to do some name dropping, taught me like how to actually use Procreate, which was really cool. Like I knew none of the fancy things, and he like, oh, this is how you do the speed menu, and this is how you do the thing. And I was like, oh shit, I love meeting proper nerds, because like I'm not a tech nerd, I'm not good with technology, so I love meeting tech nerds because they will take happiness from like doing the thing that I find frustrating, which is like discovering functionality. If it's not intuitive directly, and if it needs me to like read a README file, I think it was one of the things that like makes me my father's son. Is like I find this kind of feeling of defeat in having to read a manual. So it doesn't always treat me well.
We have another question, which is how long did you practice your anatomy and get familiar with them, and only to start to draw your own character?
Well, so that question like implies an idealistic relationship between study and execution. And I didn't really have that. Like I would study from failure. So like I would work up until the point where I didn't know what to do, and then after having beat my head against the wall for some time, then I would go and study. Like I was bad at a preliminary studying. So, I mean, and I still kind of do that. So it there isn't a good way of answering that question because I was executing. I was trying to do full characters, and I was in that mindset where I'm like, if Bruno Gore can do it, I should be able to do it. So like the absolute arrogance of a young art student. Like, oh man, I've seen Photoshop. I pretty much understand it. And then like you keep on with it for like 10 years, and you come back and you meet someone who really knows Photoshop, and you're like, oh, what is this magic? But yeah, no, I didn't particularly wait, but I kind of wish I had. It would have been a good idea. I'm rambling now, and I'm aware of that, but I figure some perspective on it is useful. But anyway, yeah, it wasn't a set time period, so it's difficult to answer that one.
Another question? Yeah.
I saw there's a request for doing Gothmog.
Yeah.
Now that could be cool, because then you kind of have to. There's an aspect of Tolkien there that needs to be kind of done without being overdone. So there's this aspect of the beginning of the Silmarillion, just to get real deep into like the nerddom, the Ainulindale, the first book of the of the Silmarillion, where the gods are they're explained in depth, and they're kind of talked about, and they're all explained as some sort of natural force of one way or the other, be it anthropomorphic or purely natural. And like Moth God is discord, so it'd be really interesting to see him in some sort of concept, or like where he's like the breaking apart of things. I love that idea. So like like someone set in like a giant piece of armor, as that giant piece of armor is actively sort of tearing itself apart. That's more of like an interesting concept to me than anything else. But of all things, I kind of had the idea of doing that with something working on the same elements as like the Transformers movies. Those kinds of transformation animations could kind of work. These like moving sub elements thing. I kind of like that idea, but it would also have to feel like that's where the hard thing is, because it would have to feel as not sci-fi. So there's a very 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 weird line to kind of go there, but it's the only visual idea I've ever had of Gothmog. I just have to figure out how to draw it.
We have a question by Sagi. It's have you also studied Bridgman? If so, what have you learned on his books that you still use now? Do you recommend his books?
I've never studied Bridgman. He's more about, as far as I understand it, it's more about like light than sort of anatomy. And I kind of both had a great bonus and a bit of a sort of limiting experience by so completely identifying as a draftsman for many years. So like I was not about painting. I was not about like drawing as a preliminary for painting. So like light was kind of a chore, much like color was a chore. And like that's one of the things I really regret, is that I didn't get into those things earlier on like the premise of like, no, I'm a draftsman. Oh, that's what I want to do. Like this idiotically arbitrary sort of specialization really annoys me today, because I'm like, I wish I'd taken to it earlier and had gotten a more dynamic relationship to it. Hope that doesn't sound too self-serving. Anyway, so Bridgman. I never really did Bridgman studies. I also wish I had done that, because like they seem like great training exercises for patience. I think that's a lesson I should have learned like way earlier than I did. So yeah, learn to slow down, people. It's the best way of speeding up. So speaks old Uncle Evan.
It's also a rule at kendo, by the way.
The what?
To do things fast in kendo,
Who?
they say kendo, the sport, stick fighting.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
I have such problems with kendo.
They say that if you want to do things fast, you first need to know how to do them slow.
Oh yeah, I mean I guess they're not all wrong, but yeah, there's something fundamentally. I'm probably overthinking. I'm wrong about this, but I always have like this kind of annoyance with when martial arts become point sports, like competitive sports, because, and not to like cast shade on kendo. I know it's a great exercise and it's fantastic sort of character building thing, but it's not a martial art. It is not made for actual sword fighting, and not that that's a problem. Like it's still great, but
now the problem is when it became a sport from initially being nothing else than training to kill people. So
right, it's like polo. Well, polo is fine, but it's like it is a civilized version of like training people how to be cavalry officers and striking the heads off the peasants.
Yeah.
And I like the somewhat available social stigmas that still exist in countries where polo is existent. It's like
let's just use a ball.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's better they use a ball than peasants, but still, like. There are better things to do on a horse, I guess.
Yeah, probably.
I don't know. On the other hand, I am tremulously goddamn fascinated with like this Turkic Mongolian sport where they like drag around a dead sheep and essentially play rugby on horseback.
On Afghanistan, they do the same.
And I'm fascinated by that because I'm like that is at least sort of direct ancillary training for like dexterity on horseback and like probably I haven't actually seen it. I would love to see it, but like. Like it's ancillary training for like horse-borne violence, which I'm like, at least that's kind of directly useful.
First time I saw it was in Rambo 3. Have you seen Rambo 3?
Oh man, I have not. I think I've only seen one Rambo movie. I never got. I love the idea of of that kind of like he's not uncomplicated, I guess. Like his whole first movie is about PTSD. So
now we went to Rambo. This is so cool.
Huh?
Now we went to Rambo in general. Like,
oh yeah, dude, but I love that era's relationship to action heroes, where it was an uncomplicated love letter to like action movies. It wasn't like to some people it was about the violence and the destruction and the yada yadas, but I cannot be I don't think I'm wrong in saying that part of that culture was like an uncomplicated joyous expression of just action movies, not its relationship to the real world, and not like the perpetuation of like a normalization of violence. Like I don't think those questions were there in the first instances of like just pure action movies. And I don't like what it's become now, and I don't really think those movies are good movies, but I do like that ethos of just like like Roadhouse.
Yeah,
which is so dumb, but it's
which
so
kind of
great.
brings us back to kendo, by the way.
we had Roundhouse Kendo.
We had this guy.
We should call this entire podcast, this entire Twitch whatever. Yeah. This thing just Evan rambling for an hour a week.
Which would be your talk at general talk at industry workshops or something.
Oh come on, man! I'm structured.
No, man. I mean, it's
so mean.
It's the rant everybody's waiting for. Lord of the Rings or something.
Dude, I ain't no Mike Hill.
Oh yeah. Okay.
God, his lectures are legendary.
Yeah.
Where I don't. Usually I'm pretty good at this silhouette thing, but somehow lately I've become freaking terrible. So there must be holes all over the place here.
You need to do it slowly.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. There it is.
We got
You're not wrong, here. Walter. You're just an asshole.
we have two people asking if you have read the Mistborn books.
I don't know. What are I mean, if I don't know, I probably haven't. But there we go. What are the Mistborn books? Can someone give me a short synopsis? I don't. I mean, by the virtue of needing a synopsis, I probably haven't read them. But I also do have the memory of a goddamn. I was about to say swordfish and goldfish.
Yeah, like you have a short memory. Sorry. Like, come on, man. I mean, yesterday you were talking about all kinds of history stuff that you heard lately, and it was shit about Greece that I.
Well,
didn't even
yeah,
know.
okay, but that's okay, fine. So it's not ubiquitously bad, but it's pretty bad. Anyway,
Then
I
let's.
probably haven't. Unfortunately, I would have loved to chat about those.
Yeah, just let's.
I should probably read them. I probably mentioned it last time, but I'm reading this book called Severian of the Guild, and it is probably the craziest book I have ever read. It is written by a person who's like either a genius or just like the biggest troll in the world. And he just like his playground is the science fiction genre, and he's just screwing with you. Like, he controls the narrative in a way where you're like, oh, I think I know what the trope is, and then boom. Or he'll be like, oh, I'm setting up this character development, and then you're like, oh man, I care, and then it's like, boom! Oh, you thought George R. R. Martin was mean? I'm meaner. Woo! So you should all check those out. Oh.
Yeah, it was Brandon Sanderson. His Final Empire trilogy was the Mistborn stuff. Yeah. Anyhow.
Oh, Brandon. I'm still not there yet. I will read Brandon Sanderson on the suggestion of many people, and
Yeah.
I think he is next in my reading list. But for at the moment, we're still stuck on Gene Wolfe's Severian of the Guild. I gotta go get some water. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Is it okay? I'll be back in like a minute.
I will just keep talking. Hey, Sal. By the way, yeah, Brandon Sanderson. Thinking about that guy, I'm reading the Reckoners books right now. Have you guys read these one? They're pretty good. A pretty interesting turn on the superhero idea. I like it. There he is.
And we are back to the back.
Do you have any specific recommendations regarding medieval armor and clothing, or just Pinterest the shit out of it?
Oh, be careful with Pinterest, because it is it's a mixed bag of reference. So like, you can get some gold in there, but it's going to assail you with half-hearted LARP solutions. So what I would suggest is, like, depending on how deep you want to go in your studies, youngin', one thing would be to source the Osprey books. There's a lot of collections of those you can find free online, or at least online as downloadable PDFs. And there's like, those are very well regarded as sort of historical reference, so they're really good. And usually they have my voice is going. Usually they have really good and historically accurate illustrations by Angus McBride or someone similar, so that they're great. Other than that, I would say Google is a surprisingly good source, as long as you're sort of specific with your search terms. So if you combine your searches with reenactor, and you sort of develop a bit of a critical eye, then that's a useful source too. And the many reenactment groups that are around on the internet. Facebook, there's a bunch of these groups that have pretty active Facebook groups. So if you search, for example, if you Google reenactment groups in either in your area or in a specific area that might reflect some sort of historical period, you probably find it. So there's Roman reenactment groups everywhere. So search for Roman reenactors and you'll find them.
He's asking, could you please type the name of that book? I couldn't catch it. What was it again? What did you say?
Oh, the Osprey books. So Osprey, like the bird.
Yeah.
I'll type
Okay,
it in.
got
Yeah,
it.
there you go. Legends of Side Quests. Wrote it down. Thanks, Legend.
Miguel, I'm gonna talk to you about the music. Don't worry. What
Oh,
book do
that
you
sounds serious. Miguel, you're in trouble. Run, Miguel, run!
Nah, it's a group called Runefell, and we have a little deal with them. It's not royalty free.
Oh,
What book do you recommend for starters? I'm not sure if it's about drawing or reading actually, but I think it's about drawing.
well, if it's for drawing, then I'm usually pretty set on saying that Andrew Loomis's Fun with a Pencil is probably the best book I've ever read on like getting into drawing and understanding what the craft of drawing is specifically, and sort of like getting an understanding of what the focus is and how to sort of figure out drawing. Apart from being art, it is craft, and being comfortable with the craft is very useful as far as sort of self-development goes. So I would say Fun with the Pencil is really goddamn useful. I would say anything by Claire Wendling is just pure magical inspiration and should be treated as such. If you don't know Kim Yoon-gi, you've been missing out. So you really should check him out for the same reason, and for like an entirely different take on what, like, just weird manerial source material can be. Like you see him kind of reflected in his work in the same way that Claire is, but like in an entirely different way. It's like he's been on acid for like years, but in a nice way.
Imagine Jungi would make a tutorial. Like,
just draw it. You just draw it, and there it is on the page, and you did it. You do it. You got it. So I don't know. I've heard him talk outside of speeches or outside of appearances about drawing, and it is infuriating. Even though I share his view on like the idea of practice and the fact that we are kind of drawing machines when we want to be. So it's about feeding the machine and being pragmatic about it, that sort of thing. Like I do like that, but it is hard to watch someone who is just so infuriatingly good, just doing it and seeming to have no issue treating these things that you feel yourself struggling with. I guess that's ubiquitous throughout. Like you can find everyone has that artist, I guess, and I guess Kim is that for many people. Would it be Yoongi? I guess, is it? Anyway, that's unimportant.
He actually doesn't like really talking about art, as far as I know.
No,
like,
I guess
he gets usually the wrong questions.
He gets asked about it, but
he usually gets the wrong questions. It's about that. like usually it's what pen do you use and stuff, and it's getting really annoying.
I'd ask about his favorite dance movie.
He probably would answer that rather than how he's drawing, because usually he's just saying you just build a fucking memory and then go for it. Like,
right. I mean, I guess
saying.
to him that's what it is. But,
Yeah. Do you read Vinland Saga?
I have read a little bit of Vinland Saga.
So it was a manga or was it?
Yeah, it's a manga. It's a Viking manga. So I get asked this a lot.
It's an
anime. I gotta say,
It's an anime now. They're doing an anime from it.
Oh no! Everything gets worse when it becomes an anime. Ooh,
but
that's pretentious, Evan talk.
No, it's but some important producer actually was doing it. Isn't it the same guy that did Castlevania? Oh no! Wait a second. No.
No earthly idea.
Wait, Bryan Singer? Is it that guy? Some guy is doing it. But yeah, sorry.
That sounds like a legit name. But anyway, I read a little bit of it. I thought it was pretty cool. It was pretty interesting, but I never got like super into it. Maybe I should have.
What do you think Morgoth Melkor looks like? Most illustrations I saw are just like a design variation of movie versions of Sauron.
Yeah, so like the way most people draw, like the way most renditions of both Melkor and Sauron kind of end up looking is like a beefed up version of a ring wraith. Like, because that's the one point of reference people kind of think about with those two. And then they usually, described either in their elaborate sort of hiding way, with Sauron being pleasant looking as an elf or whatever, going around tricking people into taking his rings, and Gothmog before he became like Lucifer essentially. So, like as I kind of talked about before, I always thought about Melkor as being sort of or Gothmog. No wait, Melkor and Gothmog are the same, right? No, Melkor and Morgoth. Wait,
Morgoth and Melkor.
Gothmog. Who the hell is Gothmog again? Because I think maybe I misunderstood. I thought they were talking about Morgoth, but if that's Gothmog, isn't Gothmog a different thing? Anyway. Daniel Fabro, can you correct me on this?
I can't tell you because I have never read the Silmarillion.
Earlier the question was about Morgoth / Melkor, but now the question is about
No, like
Melkor and Morgoth.
What do you think Morgoth Melkor
Gothmog
looks like? Most illustrations I saw are just the design variation of movie versions of Sauron. Gothmog was the very early question.
Oh right, I'm way off.
Morgoth Melkor.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so my idea for like the look of Melkor or Morgoth would be that kind of like the kind of primal force sort of thing, but it would have to be a primal force that reflects him, and he is the primal force of discord. So it would be really interesting to try and sort of, as I talked about like using Transformers sort of aesthetics in like a internal rotational build sort of thing. That could be cool, I think. I would have to, I would have to go back and like read the description and see what sort of the original text would yield. But that is a hard one to answer.
Yeah, Gothmog is the Balrog.
Mm-hmm. Oh, right. Yeah, I mean, it is hard. I mean, I'm a big fan of the movies myself, so it's hard to sort of to try and come up with something that would be entirely out of reach from the movie. But I think if you wanted to go an entirely different route, I'd probably just steer away from like the utterly recognizable cliche shapes. So like not a scully face, but something more amorphous, something more moving, and like lean into that magma element more maybe, and like have a substructure over which the lava or the molten sort of core is running, having sort of more dripping and like less sort of classic demonic, I guess. Kind of make the wings more implied, more as like a moving shadow, kind of when he's going whoosh with the shadow, but having it more like less a physical shape shedding like shadow as a fog, but more like a trick of the light sort of thing. I think that could be cool.
Talking about shadows, can you explain your techniques on how you find shadow colors?
Usually by using sort of layover layers. So I'll show you when I get there, but ostensibly working with multiply or soft light layers, or hard light layers, or darken layers, depending on whether or not I have a set color in mind. But multiply I usually use for a lighting situation where I want detail both in light and darkness. That way I can establish a value difference between light and shadow that is kind of workable, so that like it's not unpleasant to look into the light or the darkness, and then sort of work up and down from that value range with the soft light layer on top, which I think is very useful. Or another way of doing it would be like darken, for example. I'll use a specific color if I'm using a dark layer, because it works kind of like a multiply, like a normal layer, but it doesn't allow me to go up in value. So it's a good sort of little blocker for myself, so I don't get into other ideas, and it's easier to stick to the shading when I'm doing that. So by using the darken layer, I'll pick a specific color that kind of has a mood value towards what I want the general concept to say. 'Cause especially if it's gonna apply to more than one character, it's good to have that as like a character tie-in between characters. And then I would sort of use soft light or another sort of value layer where you can add and subtract value. Yeah, I mean, you can also go a third route where you're essentially using like a normal layer, and then also a smudge brush and sort of like laying it in softly towards inner shadows. But that's then I would just use it as like a darker value of the local color, and then affect sort of hue change in the light instead, and just have the dark be mundane. Like we can get into a large discussion of like color theory and how to talk about light and shadow, but essentially, thinking in comparative contrast is important. I think when you do shadow choices. So if you want a character to appear with a majorly desaturated and cold light, then it works to choose shadow or shading values that are warmer, either by adding specific warmth or relying on the coldness of the light that you lay in with subsequent lighting layers to do the job. But having a sense of that, having a sense of comparative contrast and how to sort of apply that, it would be useful. Yeah, I hope that answers it. Again,
I think it did.
Got a little ranty there.
As much as it could in like 10 minutes, I would say. Good job.
It went 10 minutes. Jesus.
Pudding Errand is asking, "Hi Evan, not seeing you drawing much things about Eastern Asia. Any interest with them? I have just watched some movies really touched by the art."
Oh yeah. I mean, I gotta say, I recently started playing Three Kingdoms Total War, which is it's a pretty good game. I kind of like it. I do. I really like it. It's good. It's great. If anyone likes to play Total War and they know that series and they're not sure about Three Kingdoms, they should get it because it's good. It's a good game. But yeah, no, I've thought about doing. I was little behind the scenes story here. I was slated to work on a Chinese movie at some point with some historical things, and then some things fell through. Unfortunately, I never got to do it. But I was real psyched. I was doing research on like Han era Chinese armor stuff. So that was interesting. I find that whole theater of historical warfare quite interesting because it was an empire so early that the methods by which they created armor became orthodox like real quick, and so most armor is like plate or coat of plate armor, and then it becomes like a mass amount of internal or like variations on that theme, and not really a lot of development. So between like the Han period of the Three Kingdoms up until the 1200s, essentially little change. Like they introduced and then limited the production of chainmail, as far as I understand, essentially because its maintenance was so much higher. So like because everything that was produced en masse, at some level or another, would be developed because it was commissioned by the Imperial Army or the Imperial Armies, depending on how many Chinese states there were at the time. So, like for example, in Europe, where it was like it had much more of an ethnic connotation, armor kind of marched up one of two ways essentially. It was just North Chinese and South Chinese, and that's because the theaters of war was slightly different. But yeah, so I've done much more research than I've actually ever sort of drawn Chinese, or I mean, guessing since you said Eastern Asian, it was meant to be that. But I've also read a bunch about Mongols, and that is an interesting armor history. Just like it's a testament to how much the spoils of war can influence a culture. But yeah. Yeah, was that worth listening to? I'm not sure.
Again, I think you did well.
Hey.
What you said about Gothmog, totally true. I have a completely different picture of him in my mind every time I read the books. LOL. Yeah. Will Hallett Art. Question. I have enough thought heard you talk about Claire Wendling before on how you learn all you need to know about anatomy from her. Can you expand on that?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, if you're looking to learn and understand anatomy, and you want a guiding star by which to guide you or by which to follow, you can just look at how, like, if you want a master class in the excellence of breaking down anatomy into aesthetic shapes and then sort of contextualizing it through like combination, then she is the thing to look at. The like just the amount of stuff that she manages to break down into a few delicate shapes is just, it's utterly delicious. It needs to be seen by everyone, and then it needs to be treasured. But it's if you look at someone like Loomis, just as an example of something similar but not quite the same. He's a very elegant draftsman, is Loomis. But Claire Wendling, I think more than anyone else, has elevated the craft by her example. And so, like, if you analyze her the way you analyze anatomical drawing in general, you will learn so much.
Can you tell us what you use for studying drawing, like anatomy, light, shape, etc., and what helps your inspiration when you feel down?
Inspiration is a difficult beast. I usually try not to rely on her. I think just because you can't. It's nice when it's there, but if you need it and it's gone, then you're screwed. So best to sort of learn how to make it without it. But if you're thinking more about, like, not feeling up to the task of drawing in a day, then I would say do a lot of preliminary work. That's become my kind of my calling, or my port in a storm. So when, like, if I'm having a hard day and I'm like, I'm trying, I'm doing my best, but you just having one of those days where it's not gold, it's just not doing it for you today. Then, rather than beginning to beat your head against the wall and wailing, the evils of man, take a step back and just look at, like, what are you trying to do? And very often, at least in my case, the answer will be like, kind of, and that's usually where the problem's at. Because I'm like, oh wait, I have no idea what I'm trying to do. That's why. Like, I've been, if I'm like, I gotta do like a character, but then I haven't thought very clearly about, like, who that character is. I'm just like, it's kind of a warrior kind of thing, and then I'm looking back at the drawing. I'm like, well, okay, so why don't I like the drawing? Oh, because it's generic. It's not interesting. It's a boring character. It's like, oh yeah, because my idea was boring. So by making sure that, like, by the time you sit down to draw, you have a specific idea in mind, and you've already solved, like, the most difficult problem, which is to come up with something to draw. You neatly sidestep the whole issue of, like, the panic of the blank page. So I think that's real worthwhile. I think that's a good way of gaining some confidence when it comes to it. Because if you can sit down with that knowledge, with some things figured out, and you can sort of feel good about the first couple of marks you make, and you can have a perception of what you want the end product to be like, to sort of reflect, or not, like, you set your parameters for success rather than relying on some vague feeling of inspiration. I feel it's easier to derive satisfaction from success, and also to figure out whether or not I've completed something that I set out to do.
Maybe we should make this part of the answer part of an FAQ or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just by how often it has been asked so far, but of course it's always individual to answer that. So maybe we don't.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, let's get another question. So, okay. I think how did you study anatomy is kind of random.
Well, no, that's a pretty fair question because it's.
I'm never sure if you want to ask if you want to answer it actually, because it's pretty like there's a lot of stuff in there. It's pretty general.
Yeah, but it's a good question because it speaks to a curiosity that usually goes hand in hand with like feeling that kind of lost feeling themselves. So it's worth answering, I think, on that basis.
Go for it.
So I'll just make it quick. That when figuring out what to study, that's usually a question of figuring out what you are not good at the moment, or what you feel you have biggest problems with. So my way of figuring that out has not always been the most efficient. So I'm not necessarily saying that this is the best way of going about it, but it is a way that feels natural to me. And I think like it took me a long while to get comfortable with doing it this way. So because you have to make yourself comfortable with the idea of banging your head against the wall to feel like failure for a little while, because you know that it's in the pursuit of leveling up your game, as it were. So I'll usually launch into a project or an idea kind of heads on and just like plan it out and try and like do some preliminary work and do all my sort of research and try and figure everything out sort of design wise and what I'm trying to do. But and I'll try and sort of be preventive. So I'll note down what I think I might have a problem with doing. If there's a particular texture or pose or anatomy problem or something that I think might be problematic, just so I'm aware of it. But then as I go in, I'll work the piece until I run into a problem that I don't know how to solve. And I'm trying to get better at like not being very proud. I think, at least to me, like pride is a big problem. So I'll sort of keep pushing on a problem that I should go away and study and then come back and solve. But because I really like I also do love like figuring stuff out. So if I have to kind of like be honest with myself and see like, do I have the internal, do I have the sort of anatomy knowledge or whatever to solve this particular problem? And sometimes I'm like, yeah, no, I can do it. I know I can do it. If I just try one more time, I've thought it through. I kind of know it. And you kind of sort of hoping that it's just kind of like this time it's going to loosen. And the worst part is that sometimes it does. And that is just the worst because it's such a high when you like on what you desperately don't want to admit is a fluke. You did it. Oh, that feels good. But God, is it destructive. So anyway, I've gotten better at sort of looking at what's going to be the problem and going away and studying them preventatively, or at least sort of before time, so that when I come back and do the actual piece, I can kind of be leaning on what I learned from those studies. So that's how I learned. School of Hard Knocks, kids. That's where we should all go.
What's your inspiration when you feel down? Like this is part of the question, actually.
Yeah. I mean, just to bring it back, Total War games kind of gets me going. I am a terrible excuse maker for like giving myself like a little hour on the battlefield or on the strategic map. I do really love those games to an almost stupid degree. I think I don't want to get into it, but I have way too many registered hours on Rome 2 Total War. To like an embarrassing degree. But anyway, so There's that. There's working out. I'm not like a huge workout dude, even with the cap and everything. I mean, I know what you think. You look at me and you think, what? This Adonis doesn't enjoy working out. But it's true. I do like jogging. I'm a big fan of jogging. But I sprained my ankle pretty severely like 2.5 weeks ago, so I haven't been able to do that most of the summer, and that's frustrating. But yeah, jogging is great. Like, proper endorphin bomb. And I am very lucky that I live close to where my best friend has his tattoo studio. So if I'm like bummed and I need, to go and just like detach a little bit and just chit chat with an old buddy, I have that. But I think, and it doesn't really sort of help anybody, but it really helps to live with my wife. It's really nice to be like, oh man, this sketch sucks, and then she'll come and be like, it's pretty good, and then it's like, yeah, having someone who can give you compliments that actually matter to you, and who will also not, they won't sugarcoat it. If your thing is in need of like improvement, she will be, you can rely on that person to really tell it to you, and tell it to you in a constructive way, or at least a way that you can kind of find a way forward. To me, that's my wife, but I think everyone needs that. I think it's one of those things that before her, I only kind of had that in a permanent way in conceptart.org. Let's try saying conceptart.org 10 times real quick. It ain't easy. But yeah, that was just to really rant on, because I know I go on, but Jesus Christ, I do. If there's one sort of thing in the past that I unironically miss, it is the concept.org days, because that was magical. There was something so awesome about having like a place to put your stuff, and people were just there because they were interested in the improvement in the work, and everyone was exchanging and being. And I know I probably sugarcoat it. I don't know if it was actually as good as I remember it, but I remember it as awesome.
Are each of those flat colors in a different layer?
No. I don't hold with this sort of. I get bored real quick, and so I don't spend a huge amount of time on my layers unless I have to. So I'll usually just work most of my colors on a single layer, unless there's like a specific object that I know is going to be very sort of edge specific. So no, I find it much easier to sort of doodle around in colors, and I'm not particularly clean with them because most things get pulled together pretty well with the overlay layers later. So you can be kind of free to screw around a little and try things. Speaking of comparative contrast, by the way, like I'm trying to coax like little blue tones and stuff out of the cape because it's contrasting so much with the yellow. But all this stuff here, for example, I don't know if it appears like that to everybody else, but it's a nice little sort of blue tint to me. And that's just because of the strength of this yellow color down here, because it's actually like a grayish yellow. And then I'll probably pop in some tasted little blue deets later. Anyway, back to the questions. Back to the back.
Yeah, that one I hope I can restrain myself and not say anything about it, because I know what will come now. I'm curious about... Oh. Have you read the Witcher novel series? What's your opinion about the lore? Any interesting in creating something about the Witcher? Go, Evan.
Well, see, like I haven't read the books, right? I read the first 100 pages of the first book, and good God, is it self-indulgent? Like, no one's more in love with Geralt than this writer dude. But that's fine. Like, if he didn't like his own character, that'd be sad. But I gotta say. I have to say, I know we all enjoy a good Mary Sue, but god damn it, who needed fantasy Batman? This guy has he's got there are no flaws with him. He is like them, and I don't want to be a grump, but yeah, I think it's probably good. I should read the books. Maybe they're great. Maybe I would make my own thing. But I do not love the whole like. And it's got white hair, and it's got cat eyes, and it's got sexy magic and skin tight chainmail, and it's like, all right, cool. And also, he hunts beasts with swords. I'm sorry, that's not the craziest thing in the goddamn universe. But come on, couldn't it be cool for him to have like a silver spear or something? That'd be cool. Or a bow. Like, why does he have the flimsiest little crossbow? If I was him, I would have like a goddamn arbalest with a harpoon. How cool wouldn't that be? I'd hunt down a hip, like just like Monster Hunter in the world of The Witcher would be cool. If if all of them were as elaborately designed as the goddamn hippogriff, that would be amazing. But yeah, I don't know. Like I'm being flippant here. I do love what The Witcher represents. I do. I really do. Like being aware of the history of the fantasy genre and of in general the and thanks for being the resident troll, Spiro. But I'm aware of the fact that like we are extremely privileged. And by we I mean like people who aspire to and enjoy working in sort of fantasy as a genre. Like I'm aware that it's a blessed time to exist as one of these freaks, because yeah, damn, there wasn't always this volume of stuff out there. And I gotta say, like, it's the best thing in the world to have a career where most of my stuff is drawing orcs and goblins and trolls and dragons and stuff, like regardless of whether or not it's my favorite project in the world. But most of the time it's magical, I gotta say. But yeah, I just the whole like the amount of work, and I'm talking purely about the video games now. I'm not picking on the books. I haven't, as I said, I'm not at a point where I can discuss them. But I thought it was a shame that that such great visual world building went into the service of a concept that I don't know that I loved. I don't know. Like, oh man, I sound like such a pussy. But because what you're expecting on Twitch stream is people to go all out. But I don't think I am that much against it. I just don't like Geralt as a character. I think he's boring. I
told you before, you need to read the books. You really need to.
Yeah, but you use that as a defense of the games, and that's where I draw the line, sir.
No,
because God damn it, if I have to read books to enjoy a game, then it's not a good game.
No,
and all I'm saying is, I'm just saying The Witcher 3 should have been about Ciri, because that was the funnest part of the game.
I'm just telling you that if you have read the books, the games would be much easier for you to enjoy. That's all I said. I didn't say it's an excuse for it. I'm just saying you would have an easier entrance into the world, because you would get of a couple of relations much better that haven't been really explained in the games. Because it's a direct continuation of the story that was in the books. And in the books, actually, Geralt is anything but perfect. Like, actually, he's described.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, but I am the ranter on this Twitch stream, so let's get back to me.
I said I can hardly restrain, man. It's like that one topic.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but you should really do some fan art at some point. Because, like hate art. Maybe it's not fan art, but it's just hate art.
Just Geralt. But I mean, it's gonna be a TV series now, and I mean, in terms of picking a. Yeah, come on. In terms of picking a guy to look that suave and that boring at the same time, they could have done worse than Henry Cavill.
Dude, there are so many better choices than that guy.
Who would
Mikkelsen.
You possibly? No, Mats Mikkelsen is a person. You cannot. You just love the idea of Geralt being better than he is. He is not.
Oh, come on, man.
No, Mats Mikkelsen is a character actor. He acts characters, and if that's one thing Geralt is not, it is a character.
There may be a cardboard version of Mats Mikkelsen, like a doll, like moving, I don't know, like South Park or something. I don't know. Come on.
Nah,
Okay,
nah, nah.
let's take another question. Come on.
In the words of my darling nephew, and nah, 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 nah.
Hey, are you working on anything you can talk about these days? Look, this is an interesting question.
I'm not. Well, I am, but it's self-serving to say that it's the Patreon. But it is the thing that I can talk about. So I can talk about that if you want. But I want to ask first because I don't want to launch into like a whole spiel without it being something people want to hear. But it is fun. It is an interesting thing to work on.
I think for the new Tolkien series to be in the new wave of trending, Gandalf should be played by a Mexican woman, for example, and Galadriel could be played by Samuel L. Jackson. I'm not going there. You shouldn't either. Don't go there.
Kim Ann, I'm just saying that would be. I wouldn't mind that at all if they went that abstract. If there was like some loose postmodern interpretation of Tolkien as as like a buddy cop movie with Samuel Jackson and a Mexican lady,
The Rock.
that would be cool. I mean, it would be silly and it would have nothing to do with Tolkien. But since we're being trolled, I'll troll back and just say like that would be excellent. I mean, at some point you just got to let things go. So the thing is, like, I have such mixed feelings about that show because on the one hand, Amazon has made some legitimately good shows, and on the other hand, I cannot imagine that a wholesale whole cloth fabrication, because it's not gonna be lore. It's gonna be just stuff that they make up.
To be fair,
So
it's a bookstore. Like
no. Oh yeah, I thought you said it was a bookstore.
No, Amazon is a bookstore.
That's true. This is fair. That is fair. It is a bookstore. What can you really expect? On the other hand, they haven't really been a bookstore since they became a all-powerful mega corporation.
I know. I'm just kidding.
That has traveled back in time from the 23rd century. Careful. They're probably listening right now. Hi, Amazon. I, for one, welcome our new book-based overlords.
I think Twitch belongs to Amazon.
Oh, good. Yeah, there you go. Hi, Jeff. Love what you've done with the place. We are all doomed. God damn it.
Thank you for that answer.
Trump is going to Brexit America from the globe. Sorry, what?
I was just reading another question. Thank you for that answer on finding shadow colors. Excited to see how this piece processes. Another question is, what's your study schedule nowadays?
Oh, way too empty. I've been sort of skittering between getting caught up on doing stuff for the Patreon and doing work so that I can eat food. So between those things, it's been pretty busy. But I think as I start sort of doing, I'm going to try and do more elaborate things with the fan art things for the Patreon. So I probably will have sort of dedicated study time for that, I think, so that the stuff that we show includes less fuck ups than when I painted Sigurd and I did like the same face like 11 times. Jesus Christ.
Come on.
So there's probably going to be a bunch of study stuffs coming, but right now it's just there's no time.
It's about the question with the Chinese stuff. Thank you for your answer. People are doing more study about Chinese armor these days. Books have been published more. It's easier for artists to do study now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Entirely agree. And again, Osprey is an excellent source.
Hungry Halfling is asking, can I ask how you approach sketching your characters from a perspective besides straight on, such as interesting camera angles, lenses, etc.?
Excellent question, but no, you don't get to ask that. It's actually like it's a pretty nifty little technique that and again just to do a little bit of name dropping here. I mean, I don't know if you know that I'm kind of a big deal. It was hanging out with Kim Yoon-gi, and he kind of explained this idea that he has about doing he does 4-dimensional sketching, the psychopath. But essentially, he was talking about how, because he always works from sort of large to small, he would like establish in his head the perspective grid, and then he would kind of draw the box within which the character is, and then proceed to sort of construct and create the character from that. So he wouldn't draw the box; he would think the box. I mean, and so like that's usually what I do. So for this character, it was like something kind of like that. No, there wasn't. It was kind of like that, I guess. I mean, I don't have it in my head now, but so you can kind of. Oh wait, I can do this because it's Procreate. Get your straight lines on. It's very nice. So I can't necessarily think perfectly in fourth dimensions like some people, because you have to bend space to do it, which sounds like such a badass superpower. Christopher Nolan, everybody. But and I can't draw a straight line to save my life. But anywho, so once you've thought out the box, right, then you have the parameter in which you can play, and then you can kind of construct all the basic shapes of the character within the box. So if I move this on top, and then I do, this, and I group them, and then I'm like, oh, wait, no. Oh, I can't do that with this? Damn it. Okay. Then I'll just do that, and then shmopop, and then...
Shmopop?
Yeah, I'm giving... I really think they should have possible sound effects in Procreate. That would be great.
And you can record your own.
Yeah, and then like so then you start by sort of planning out the basic shapes, and then you overlay detail as you go. So this is a point where having that Loomis training comes in real handy, because he teaches you exactly what this is, the trick of breaking down into easily understandable systems and shapes the human body, and if you can do it with the human body, you can make sort of simplified and exaggerated versions of that. But it's good to sort of have a feeling and idea of where the different muscle groups go, so that kind of thing. So those who were watching last time will know that I screwed up the anatomy a little bit. So it's kind of a self-correcting measure after a while, but you just have to kind of work at it. But it's a really good way of getting your spatial reads sort of worked out, and then you can work out the specific anatomy as it goes along. Anyway, I hope that made any kind of sense.
Next question is, do you know if you will be doing any work on Tolkien stuff or future games, shows, media, etc.? I would love to see you involved in a project like that, so would we.
Yeah, man, I would love to. If they will have me, I will go. That's all I can really say. I haven't received an invitation, though. It's...
Yeah, let's just say if any of you guys know who to approach, then please let me know, because I have been spending days trying to find out, and it's fucking hard.
And they're probably pretty far into like post-production by this point, so it might be a little behind the curve.
Come on, there will always be a season 2 or something, or I don't know, promotional stuff.
I mean, I saw Alpha House, and that only got 2 seasons. That was great. I mean, you haven't seen it. It's great Amazon show. John Goodman as a surprisingly heartfelt Republican senator.
But it's a comedy, right?
Oh yeah.
Did you have any issues with approaching all the characters and illustrations that you wanted to do when your skills weren't so polished? If so, do you have any advice on that?
I mean, a continuous sore head counts, right? After banging my head against the wall. Yeah, I mean, I would go for stupid stuff pretty often, and especially like you learn a pretty severe lesson pretty soon when you start getting a little too elaborate with client work, and then you kind of paint yourself into a corner and you just have to like over deliver, and it's, oh man, you're up to like 6 in the morning, like, no, I gotta get all the paintbrush strokes in because I tried to make it fancy. So yeah, that can be heavy. Can you remind me what the actual question was again? Because I went off on a rant.
Yeah, sure. Did you have any issues with approaching all the characters and illustrations that you wanted to do when your skills weren't so polished?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I mean, I didn't have a problem doing it. I just had a problem sort of completing it. More like, but I think, I mean, I think pre-planning. What did they say? The 7 P's. Poor planning prevents poor performance. Prior planning prevents poor performance. So like, plan ahead. If you see something you don't know how you will approach, then take a step back and like make sure you bother to figure that out before you go on. You'll find yourself thanking yourself for like bothering to make that study or bothering to do the work ahead of time. It saves you headaches and it saves you self-doubt, which I can tell you as someone who's been working in this industry for a decade. It's not as fun as you think, kids. Self-doubt, it's all fun and games until you actually get an existential crisis and then you cry, and no one wants to cry. So
For the record, we're going on for 15 to 20 minutes, and then the stream is over. Another question is, I see that you have a line art based approach mainly in these recent drawings posted on your Instagram. Do you ever use a more shape or volumetric approach, maybe starting with color?
I haven't done well. Actually, I've done it once. I started with color once, and that was fun. It really was, but it was so time consuming because I kind of leapt into like, it was one of those things where I didn't respect the 7 P's. I did no prior planning. I just jumped in and then I had to like make corrections as I went, and it was a fun nightmare kind of. But I wouldn't say that I'm not going to do that again because again it was good fun, but it is something that I'll have to do large amounts of study specifically to like have a better grasp of color, active color theory and active color use to sort of be able to lean into as an actively used technique. But sometimes I go more abstract in the beginning, so I do less sort of line art and more of a sort of rough value sketch, and then rougher colors on top, and then go in and just paint with my shadow layers or with a set shadow, like deep shadow color. So it happens.
I want to recommend you a very cool Chinese movie. It's called Let the Bullet Fly. It's about early 20th century in China. Costumes are really awesome. Let the Bullet Fly.
Ooh, go check that out.
Question. I also have an iPad and I'm currently struggling with my initial digital sketches on coming out as good as my sketchbook sketches. Do you experience something similar when doodling in Procreate?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of stuff that digital for some reason that I do not know or haven't researched enough see at all, which is like, it's hard to emulate actual pencil drawing on an iPad or on digital without it becoming either extremely sort of self-aware or formulaic. So if you want to do like clean line drawing, it's hard to do that uninterrupted digitally in general. And I think while I think the iPad does a good job of it and is a better tool than most, it is by no means flawless, and it's much easier and much more satisfying still to draw with like a nice brush pen or a pen in general, like for doodling, for sketching, or for like quick observation sketching. I like a good ballpoint pen. Something so lovely about like, collecting little abstract shapes and sort of outlining them and stuff for gestural drawing. So and that's hard to do on an iPad. I'm not quite sure why that is. I'm sure some brilliant person is gonna write about one day soon. But there's that, and like general ink work is just easier to feel like you have a control over in real life. And I think that comes down to the fact that because there's more at risk, it's easier to force yourself to look deeply at the thing you're trying to do and sort of make specific choices when you do like ink work than it is digitally, because it's so easy to fall into like the Control Alt Z trap and just like keep going, like trying and then like not being quite happy and then trying again and not being quite happy. Because in traditional work, you have to take the risk and then you have to try to make like the nice mark with a pen, which is more or less irreversible. And then, you know, if it doesn't work, then you have to be clever and you have to sort of work around it. And I think that's a tremendous learning tool. So I think you miss out on that with digital. Yeah.
Are there certain questions that you wished that Twitch chat would ask you?
Oh.
Good one.
Oh, I don't know. You know how my day is going. You know what I want to do for the fan art. You know,
Come on.
Yeah, that. I don't know. I'm kind of focused on the drawing, so I'm happy to have the distraction of the chat. So I'm real happy to answer questions. It's actually quite a useful sort of distraction. So that like usually what I would do would listen to some podcasts or other. You guys are a really good alternative. So thank you for sticking around and for coming around.
Yeah, plenty of more questions. Let's hit the next one. You're laying in what looks like complementary colors on the skin of your character, but it's not shadow or light, just color variation. Do you always lay in desaturated complementary colors as color variation or flat layer? I hope that makes sense. I've seen James drawing using similar techniques possibly.
Yeah, I mean, I do try and paint over a distinctly colored underpainting quite often, especially when it's personal work, because I think that makes like a nice little effect, and I think that adds a lot of interest and a lot of it adds an ease to which I can treat color, where I can give up a little bit of control and get a lot of like lovely variation back. And I think that's really it's a chance investment that usually pays off pretty well. And if it doesn't, then because it's personal work, I can always go back and like do it again. That's not that much of a loss if it sucks. But my general plan is, you know, that I work from like a base color. So this time it was like a smattering of sort of warm oranges, and then I've been working desaturated yellows for the most part on top of it. Try and coax these like different colors out, and then when I have a good enough separation of items and like different things, I will try and add like little touchstones of like tastes of the actual color, just to accentuate, see if that works or whether or not that destroys the complementary thing. So it's a little bit of an experiment, because I think you can only really work it like that far. I think little touches of like blue, for example, will just bring out like the sense of blue in the cape without actually being saturated blue. So I'm trying things, I'm testing. I think this is the advantage of doing these kinds of like doodles, is that I get to try out little theories and little things. That's cool.
Do you have a sketchbook on conceptart.org or work from very early years that look amateurish?
Oh, yeah. Okay. If you guys are up for a little bit of Evan humiliation, which I'm sure you're not, you're way too nice for that. But if you want to, you can go on the old DeviantArt page, where some of my old shame is still on file. So if you find my website, then if you go into the gallery and you find the scrap section, you'll get some pretty well, they're usually my go-to examples of like, whenever anyone comes to me and talks about talent, I'm like, I was not talented, you son of a bitch. I dragged myself from these pieces of poop up to the astronomical heights of homebound freelance work. So don't you come talking to me about talent.
We have one we had last time too, which is if you can go back at the time when you start drawing, what would you say to yourself?
Ooh, it's gonna be fine. There are jobs. Chill. Like, it's like a cliche, right? That like what you wanted to learn when you were younger was, you know, like the wisdom you have now. And I don't think I think that has to be experienced, right? Like working your way through the problem of like self-development to a point where you're like, oh, I can learn how to learn. I think that's instrumental. But I think I could have saved myself a lot of like belly aching and nervousness by being like, just be disciplined and draw what you like. Develop your own sense of cool. Like, it's okay. You don't know shit right now. You have no idea what cool is. Cool. Then you go and you study and you focus on just like academic improvement, and not in terms of like math, but academic in terms of like academic drawing. And you'll figure cool out. It's just another like thing. It's just a context. It's just a thing. It's awesome. Just take your time. Have fun. Go on, kid. And, you know, start climbing, because that shit's awesome. And, yeah, I would, oh, yeah, now that I think about it, I would get myself into bouldering, like, right away. And then be like, yeah, don't be a pretentious prick. Like, just learn to work with people. There's so many things I should teach myself if I was back in the beginning. One of them being like, you earn no points for being a pretentious prick. So just be kind to people. You know, they'll give you the thing that you need so desperately. A little bit of attention.
Hungry Halfling is this reply is still at Gerald. By the way, you have no, it's me. He's kind of like the fantasy hero equivalent.
But you're cutting out on me.
Sorry? Everything okay? Can you still hear me?
You're cutting out on me a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, but can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I was just saying that the Hungry Halfling was saying that Gerald is pretty much the fantasy hero equivalent of Christian Grey for the ladies who read 50 Shades.
Yeah, kinda. And in as much as Christian Grey is, you know, like the porny version of Batman, yeah, like he's Christian Grey or he's Batman. It's the same thing to me. It's just a thoroughly detestably boring person. Sorry, Batman, but you are boring. Like, your adventure is interesting, but you as him as an individual is not interesting. He's just traumatized, and that's fine, but that doesn't make him a hero. I mean, it kind of does. I don't want to say that like PTSD sufferers are not heroes, but they're usually heroes for other things too. And it's just, yeah, I don't know. Batman kind of, he's a good canvas. He is, like Link, but just a little too in love with himself. I'm Batman.
Link is seriously a nobody. Like there's nothing there.
Yeah. He's just a canvas, which is very effective.
But he's not trying to. That's the difference.
No, he doesn't have agency. That's the point. It's not a person. It's just you. He's the player. That's exactly what Geralt should have been. He should have been, and that is kind of what he is. But then they forgot that, and they were like, "Let's give him a personality." And it's like,
come on, it's okay.
Sorry, everybody.
You're repeating yourself. Have you read the Kingkiller Chronicles?
I have. Well, yeah, the two. There's a third coming out. Yeah, I have. I really feel weird about those books because like part of me really wants to like them, and they are well written books, but I don't like them. And I can only say, well, they're well written books, but it's such an elaborate world built around such again, like these characters are so. I don't know. Maybe I read it wrong. Maybe I was not in the right mood or something. I hope that, because like I hear so many people love those books, and I hate to be just like, petulant and going against the stream for the sake of going against the stream. But if Quoth is not the wizard's version of Geralt, then I don't know. Like, he is so very a Mary Sue with like a smattering of personal trauma, which is so like, ooh, my background was perfect, and then the mean men came to town, but they're not all men, and they're also kind of like weirdly god things, and they killed specifically my family because my family knew their name. And then I went to school, and that's
You can read
not Harry Potter.
You can read every story like that.
Yeah, but it's just he's so perfect, Quoth or Quoth or however you pronounce his name. It's just he's such a Mary Sue, and like the way that you would defend against the Mary Sue argument would be like, yeah, but look at this dark side of his, and he's got as much a dark side as like that Australian comic Tim Minchin, like in his song "I Can Have a Dark Side Too." It's not it doesn't feel earned. It's just these characters that they threw out, and then I never felt like the time spent in like getting to know that family in retrospect actually felt. Like if you compare that to the how you learn about like the Weasleys, for example, in Harry Potter, in Harry Potter, or the background of like Harry, that helps like emphasize with Harry. But I could never get to grips with Harry's family because that always felt like too just, oh, they were so perfect, and then like, no, but they weren't that perfect. But then the way they're set up is like, oh, they're so perfect. But then they get killed. I don't know. I'm not a book critic. Don't listen to me. I don't know anything. But I felt it's not the direction I hope fantasy is gonna be taking. But fun. Again, like if you're listening, Patrick Rothfuss, which I'm sure you are, I think you're a really good writer. I just don't like your characters.
You can even pull this off with Harry Potter. Like the same thing, like how generic he is, how there's.
But he isn't. He wasn't for his time.
Huh.
Like that hero, unless I'm entirely mistaken, that's not a cliche. Like, yeah, they fish out of water thing, but that works. That I'm fine with. But it's like Harry is a piece of shit, and he is, proud little asshole who gets his friends into trouble because he has to be this goddamn messiah complex based on like that he's an orphan, which is like, that's fair, that's good, that's well set up. But his orphanage, like the background of his being an orphan gets played out real well with his sort of friendship and then animosity towards Tom Riddle, and then we get to know that that's Voldemort. Spoilers. And like that all feels earned. It feels like we understand Harry's background, and like the scene where like what the scene that kind of made him famous for everybody, which becomes ultimately very important for his character, is the scene where magic got introduced in his life in a very very traumatic way, right? Like that all feels like a character who's gone through something that we have been related into as readers. And I do not feel like that in The King Killer, because it feels like it's just expecting you to go along because these characters are awesome, and I do not feel them at all. Yeah, like Mary Sue's the whole lot of them, and the fact that there's a moment in the books where he literally says, like, if you haven't played this kind of instrument, you just wouldn't understand. And I wanted to just reach into the book and slap the shit out of Quoth. It's like, shut up. You're supposed to be the master storyteller, and like they're playing off this one little idea of like the unreliable narrator, but then like the motivation of that lack of motivation to be honest, it's just not it's not being produced yet, and I'm like 2/3. I'm ranting now. I do realize, but it's like 2/3 through the book already, and I don't feel like I'm sympathizing with the character yet, and I don't know if that's just me being wrong or if the character is really as awful as I feel he is. But I don't think that that should be a barrier against reading the books. But yeah, they did not find favor with me.
I wonder if people would sign up for a stream where you only rant, not even draw, like nothing, just pure rant. Because right now people are laughing their ass off.
Yeah. Oh, TB Choi is in here. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and she noticed that you use Procreate.
Oh yeah, it's the best.
Like
Hashtag
I would say we
Procreate
just
for life.
pick like 2 more questions, and the rest will have to wait for next time. Because they're constantly coming more and more.
Cool.
So one of them being like first one, which is in regards to the sketch gallery that you have on DeviantArt. Like, how old were you when you were doing these?
Oh, the scrap stuffs.
Yeah.
It was from the beginning of high school, so I was like 15, 16 at the time. I was pretty late bloomer when it came to it. Like I didn't find Loomis or academic drawing before like second year of, well, no, first year of high school. So those things are like just before I, that was me exploring and finding out about Photoshop and the glory days of open canvas. Settle around the fire and listen to old man Evan regale you with stories of the olden days of open canvas. You could share a file with a person on the other side of the world, kids. That was great. And to this day, it still had the best pencil tool of any drawing tool I have ever tried. I loved it so much, and I do not know if I loved it so much because it was a free version of Photoshop and I was just like, a penny pinching child, or if it was. But in my memory, it was like the greatest drawing, like the Draftsman tool, the drawing tool, was like the greatest of all time.
Björn agrees. He just joined.
Hell yeah! Listen to the hurricane.
Let's pick this one. Generic question probably, but when he said that, not me. But when you're coming up with an idea, how do you resist ending up as a midwife between ideas you've seen before?
Dude, you keep cutting out like a little bit. So
Oh, whoa.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah, sure. The question is, when you're coming up with an idea, how do you resist ending up as a midwife between ideas you've seen before?
Ooh, that is a very good question. And that brings us into the whole idea of studying. So essentially, you can kind of break down ideas that you see into, archetypical elements and referential archetypes. And so I try, like when it comes to like orcs, for example, there's nothing new under the sun because, it's been, most variations have been done. So that's fine. But there are some things you can kind of focus on to make yours stand out and be interesting. And I think, at some point you move so far away that it no longer feels like something that could justifiably be called an orc. At which point you should just call it something else. And vice versa. Other people have tried to reinvent the orc by just giving them a new name, but essentially like it's a big green hulking mass of flesh coming at you with horns coming out of their face somewhere. But I think orcs being sort of agents of chaos and being these creatures that display sort of like the worst characteristics of humanity. Because an orc, first and foremost, should be an uncomplicated enemy to fight, I think. I mean, I love me some Elder Scrolls, but I never agreed with like the whole that vision of the orcs. I never really caught on with. I thought they were cool, but like conceptually, I don't like them. Because I think orcs should be like an uncomplicated, mean and cruel enemy, and they should be something that you wouldn't feel overly shitty about killing, or at least fighting, until maybe like you could play, the I Am Legend, Shadow of the Colossus trick, like have people kill legions of orcs and then discover that they're actually just humans. Like that could be an interesting twist. But so for like orcs, I think the main concept, the visual sort of triggers that you play with, should be something that makes it relatable to a point, so that the the thing that makes them hostile seeming is that they're just shitty humans. Like they're humans that you react negatively towards, I think, rather than being this sort of extremely other. Just for like an emotional thing, because I think if they're just rage, then they can be kind of boring. But if they're an amalgam of like a bunch of just mean, shitty things, then it's more interesting. But like in general, I just try to go to other places for referencing. So like if I was to do a knight, for example, and I just like all they told me was to do a knight and make him interesting, I would go and look at like other knightly traditions than like this overused and over iterated Western sort of cliche idea of a knight. I would go like, oh, what about a Mamluk? They were essentially knights and eunuchs. So that could be cool. That is a basis for like a whole knightly thing, because there's a lot of different variations there. Or you could go with like the sort of more early Hellenistic version of like the companion cavalry. Like knights are just a mix between like a martial grouping and a noble grouping, or social grouping. So be cool to like make variations on that. You can kind of play with the etymology and the background of things. So if you're doing, say, like dwarves, for example, and you wanted to really really lean into a Nordic mythology element, then you can like then you can go in and take like a page out of Tolkien's book, right? Where like a lot of the inspiration for the dwarves in Tolkien is like the Jewish communities. So it would be really funny, really interesting to have dwarves who played on a lot of the spiels of the things that are brought out as representing the Jewish community. That could be like a fun use of that as a reference. I think Terry Pratchett, for example, does that quite well, where there's a lot of that is like bickering and these archetypes playing up, and it's not specifically linked to them, but it's because he's leaning into the Tolkien heritage. That sort of thing. I think work out the concept in the stage of working out concepts. That way you can actively lean away from cliche.
Good answer, and good last answer.
Hey! Alright, so we managed to do more or less flat colors today. I'm going to do one little bit more. He's stolen some sheep skin, which has gotten dirty, which is hanging out under Geralt's head. Yes, by the way, I killed Geralt.
The rendering we could do in another stream next week, maybe.
Yeah, we can do the lighting and the rendering.
And for this weekend, sorry for interrupting.
Yeah, this weekend we'll do the are we doing public stream or
no? This weekend we will do the Patreon stream.
All right. Yes, we're gonna be on the Patreon. For those interested, we're running. Besides doing the fan art, I'm also sort of keeping on developing the whole like time story thing. So if you're into that, you can join the Patreon, and we're gonna be doing some of those character pieces and start like prelimming larger illustrations and stuff for later story beats. So I'm working out the story as best as I can, but I'm not a particularly good or disciplined writer, so it's taken a while. But so based on that, we're going to be doing a bunch of stuff on the thing, and we'll be posting out the sketches and stuff but it'd be probably be cool to be there in person and see it coming alive, and talking about it. And for those who are keen on drawing along, that'd be awesome too. So hope to see you on Sunday if you're around.
There are 2 questions about this. The next stream will be this weekend. We are still figuring out, like, right now I'm trying to figure out what to use, like probably YouTube. And we will send a private link to all the patrons. Is the first tier enough to join the stream? I think the stream is prohibited for the second tier. But we really haven't discussed it yet, right?
Yeah, no, we haven't. But
$11.
11 bucks. Yeah, we'll talk about it. But I think
we will see.
Yeah, we'll
more
see.
information on Patreon.
Don't want to.
Yeah, the idea of a Patreon only stream is pretty young, and came up with the last stream. And as you might think, there are a couple of things in development right now. So be patient. We will update you.
Yeah.
That's it from
me. Hope to see you this weekend.
All right. Have a great day and see you next time.
Ciao, everybody. This was nice. See you Sunday, I hope. Bye.